What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Hot Tags of the Week, episode 607 from the Smack Talk podcast here at Smark Moments. I'm your host for this edition, Callum Wiggins, and joining me, as always, Robert DeFelice.
Howdy, Callum. It seems that Tony doesn't want to leave Brazil, but that's okay. We've got the podcast well at hand until he gets back next week, and looking forward to breaking down some of the wrestling news.
Absolutely. So this is the Hot Tags, where we break down the news, gossip, rumors, reviews, recaps, all of this stuff that happened in the previous week in wrestling right here. And if you want to drop a like on the video, that would be much appreciated. Share it around. Drop a comment below about any of the topics we're going to be discussing, because there's lots of wrestling events that have taken place in the past week, a lot of great matches that we'll be talking about, as well as some interesting news stories, not as hefty as last week's one, but just to give you a bit of a heads up, in this edition we'll be talking about some recent stuff that happened in the G1 Climax, some potential injuries, some trademarks, somebody signing with AEW, talk a little bit about what happened at Slammiversary, giving a preview for what's to come at Death Before Dishonor for Ring of Honor, and obviously talking about going back all the TV stuff, talking about some titles changing hands, some blood and guts being spilled all over the ring. Going to be plenty of stuff to talk about, so drop a comment below, leave a like, share the video around. If you are so inclined and you want to tip us a little bit for our efforts here, there's always the membership here for YouTube, as well as the Patreon at patreon.com/smarkoutmoment, where you can drop a couple of bucks our way, let us know that you want us to keep the lights on, keep providing the same volume of content or even more content as we have been doing before. But without further ado, that's a few plugs out of the way. Let's get into things. So start with, I guess, let's go back in time a little bit to Slammiversary, because that was something that we previewed on the previous edition. So, and that was probably the thing that's gone like furthest back in our memories. So why don't we talk a little bit about what happened on that show, including a big return from someone who, up until Slammiversary, most people still thought, well, either had disappeared or was in WWE, but is no longer the case, and that is Eric Young.
Yeah, Eric Young was the tag team partner of Coach Scott D'Amore. They had kind of teased, hey, can you come back to life, since Eric Young was murdered at his last time in Impact. But really cool moment for him to be able to do that with Scott. And Fightful Select breaking the news that he was done with WWE back in April. Once the Endeavor deal went through, he had elected to, request his release from the company, saying that he didn't want to work with Vince McMahon. And it was evident that McMahon was coming back in the company. So it was confirmed by WWE sources to Fightful that Young had cited moral, creative, and personal reasons why he didn't want to work with Vince McMahon. And I want to add to that real quick by saying he said on Busted Open Radio today that there were well-respected people within WWE saying, thank you for leading. Thank you for being a leader. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about Eric Young taking this, moral stand?
I think that it's to be commended that he decided to turn down what would probably be a pretty cushy, lucrative position in WWE due to the fact that he's not willing to work under Vince McMahon in the circumstances that had come to light about him. Admittedly, there is the side of me that thinks that there was a lot of stuff that was known about Vince McMahon prior to these things coming out, but people still work under him anyway. But I understand his rationale for it, and I respect him for it. It shows a lot more. Again, I don't want to criticize people too much because you have to make a living, but I think there are certain people within WWE who have a pretty ironclad position where they could say that they want to do things or don't want to do things, and they'd be listened to because they have enough power and leverage backstage to do so. that haven't said anything or don't appear to have, at least not publicly, lambasted the decision. And Eric Young is one of the few people that seems willing to stand up and say, yeah, this doesn't work for me. I think I'm uncomfortable with this situation, so I'm not going to be part of it. And yes, I'm happy he's done that and he's managed to find himself back in Impact. It kind of feels that's where Eric Young belongs.
I commend him as well. I think that it's very clear, because in the same breath, in every interview he's done so far, and he's already done quite a lot, he has said he was very excited about joining WWE, and he was excited to play for the other team, the team that he signed up to play for when he signed at the end of October or early November. And when things changed, it became very clear that was no longer something for him. But again, glad he was able to end up back in Impact. I know he'll be a trusted leader there, and I hope to see some great things come out.
Yep, so that was one of the big stories coming out of Slammiversary. And obviously I can't really entail too much about the show. I only watched bits and pieces of it, but having a look at the results, and you can obviously tell things in more detail, it seemed like a night of significant change in terms of titles over at Impact.
Yeah, I believe every title but the World Championship switched hands. This was one of their more solid events overall, but I ultimately feel like every time I watch one of these shows, production-wise, it always looks so lacking that I just, it keeps them from being the Impact of old, you know what I mean? But, if you want to start running down this card, the Ultimate X kicked it off. Well, actually, I guess I should go to the pre-show. I went straight to the main card. The pre-show had Kenny King defeating Joe Hendry for the Digital Media Championship, which is a fun switch. Joe Hendry being the longest reigning champion to date. I like Kenny King as a champion. I think he'll have a lot of fun with that title going forward. He had equated Chris Sabin to Twitter and Alex Shelley to MySpace, and saying that Shelley was cool but isn't anymore. And Twitter, Chris Sabin being Twitter, is what happens when you give something that's cool, meaning the X Division title, to someone that isn't anymore, equating, Sabin to Musk. And I thought that was funny in the post-match promo. But solid stuff there. And then to see the 6-person tag where the Death Dolls and Jody Threat getting the win there. Really solid stuff. But yes, the show itself started with the Ultimate X match, which, as I believe I predicted once I sat down and thought about it, Kushida did pick up the victory. It was a bit of a twist in that Jake Something returned to the promotion in this match. I don't know if he was injured or what the deal was there, but Jake Something is back in the fold at Impact. But fun match. Mike Bayley flipping around. Kevin Knight is great. Everybody here was fun. Gresham was also in this match, and I'll talk about him in a minute. But now Kushida does have the right to challenge for the X Division Championship at any point he chooses. Funny to me that Gresham, after this, people were making a big deal about, he wasn't at the tapings for the post for the night after, and he actually appeared in a vignette on the July 20 episode, basically suggesting that maybe either Impact Wrestling or the X Division isn't the right fit for him after he spent so many years fighting for Ring of Honor and the pure rules of Ring of Honor. So something to keep your eye on there. But yeah, moving on down the card, Masha Slamovich and Killer Kelly, they're calling themselves MK Ultra, defeated the Coven to capture the Knockouts World Tag Team titles. Smart move, great team. I wish that this division was a bit more solid. We just talked about Eric Young teaming with D'Amore to beat Bully Ray and Diener. Eric Young did have a Team Canada gear, and he's actually going to be auctioning off the jacket, the gear, and the knee pads on Impact's eBay page, and the proceeds will go to Joe Doring, who is still, he's still battling brain cancer, and I think that that's a great move by Young and by Impact, and I commend him for that, as well as his decision to leave WWE.
Yeah, classy guy all around.
Yeah, for sure. Leo Rush defeated Chris Sabin in like 2 seconds because he jumped Sabin during the entrance and then threw him in the ring, hit him with frog flashes. And I was super disappointed by this all around.
Yeah, it feels like if there's one match you wanted to just like cut and get out of the way, I didn't think that this one would be the one that I would choose. It feels like these are two guys that are great wrestlers. I mean, it says something if you're trying to make, pardon the pun, but an impact by having the Air Rush win the title in such a quick and dominant way, even though it is obviously a heel tactic to attack him prior to it. But yeah, I think they could have had a really good match. Maybe they will do down the line, and this was just the precursor for it.
I also would say that I'm worried that Chris Sabin might actually be hurt because there didn't seem to be a real reason to do this otherwise, but I guess we'll see as the months go. Next, you had a 4-way match for the Tag Team Championship, and we did get new champions. I'm happy with the champions we got because Subcultures, Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews successfully defeated Ace Austin, Chris Bay, Brian Myers and Moose, and Sami Callihan and Rich Swann to take the titles. Fun match, but even more fun result with Subculture actually getting the win. How do you feel about this?
I mean, I'm fine with it. As someone who doesn't watch Impact particularly regularly, I know Subculture are a good team from their stuff in NXT UK, so I'm sure they'll have a fun run champions. But yeah, not really much to add on top of that.
I'm a little curious as to whether or not, because Impact, they do sign short-term deals. We're going to talk about one in a little bit, but I am a little curious as to whether or not this is further signs that don't expect any NXT Europe anytime soon, because I assumed Subculture would just get their jobs back. But
the clock is still ticking.
The clock is still ticking. And yeah, I'm really glad that they won these titles. I think they're a great team. They fit well with the Impact scene. They have their aesthetic down packed, and they're just a really fun team all around, and I enjoy watching them. One match that I didn't necessarily love, Eddie Edwards with Alicia Edwards defeating Frankie Kazarian with Tracy Brooks. They did the swerve of, oh, you think Tracy's going to be able to neutralize the interference, but ultimately the heels were still able to pull it out. This is going to continue. I imagine we're getting a mixed tag at some point somewhere. But yeah, this was what it was, and not too much to say here from me. I have a lot to say about a vignette that aired towards the end of this show that says Sonata, the IWGP World Champion, will be at the Emergence event on August 27th. How do you feel about Sonata appearing for Impact during the weekend of All In?
It means it won't be on the Wembley show, so
yeah,
I guess there's a thumbs up to that then.
Yeah, I mean, a good landing for Impact, and I know they do have the multiverse show, maybe even the week before, but like,
I wonder if he'll go into whatever match he has on that show with the same disdain or lack of interest as he did for the Forbidden Door show.
He very well might. I mean, I can't imagine wrestling in front of that crowd will be more exciting than wrestling in, sold out arena, but we'll see what they have in store for him.
He's not seeing many sold out arenas now the G1's happening, unfortunately.
Yeah. And of course we move on here. Trinity defeats Deonna Purrazzo to win the Knockouts World Championship. Did you watch this match?
No, I have not watched this match yet.
It's one of the longer Trinity matches. There were some rough spots. I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, it was the greatest thing ever. but it really felt like she had a point to prove. Like she just wanted to have the experience of having a good match. And I think she tried her hardest. She ended up tapping out Deanna, being the only woman in Impact to ever do that, with the Starstruck, formerly known as the Slayo Mission. And this is good. Trinity's super happy to be in Impact. How can you not be happy for her? I have nothing but positive things to say here. I even think that this could have headlined the show, except in the main event, Alex Shelley did successfully defeat Nick Aldis. And after the match, Josh Alexander returned simply to say that he was back from his torn tricep injury, and it appears he's back in that title picture. Overall, solid show, and I'm excited to see what Impact does for the rest of the year. But what do you think? Do these results inspire you at all to check out Impact, or are you just going to keep looking at results from a distance, and maybe if you hear something really strong, you'll tune in?
I would say that there's too much wrestling.
I would have.
And I can't follow with it. And it's not a whole like Tony urge to merge type thing. I'm saying I'm happy that all these wrestling companies exist and there are alternatives for everyone. I cannot devote any more time to the product than I already do, considering the fact that I'm trying to keep up somewhat with Stardom. I'm trying to watch some other Japanese shows. Like I've got a Wrestle Universe subscription now, and I've been watching some Noah matches because of the whole. There was a lot of excitement around that Nakajima Miyahara match that I checked out, and yeah, that was a really good match. So I might be checking that stuff out a little bit more. The G1's going on. I still have to keep some semblance of attention on WWE for the sake of this. So yeah, Impact is just, unless they sign someone who is just crazy good or exciting, then I won't be paying that much attention to them going forward. But no, I'm happy for people that are.
I'll say this. It's very, as someone who watches all of it, even like trying to keep up with the G1 and I also have a Wrestle Universe, so I'll try to like watch a Tokyo Joshi or a Noah show sometimes, but like a lot of this is very in one ear out the other. They all kind of blend together, and that's not even an indictment on any of the performers either. It's a great time to be a wrestler and a wrestling fan, but if you try to watch all of it, a lot of it's not going to stick. And I applaud Impact for being able to stick around for as long as they have, but I do wish I can't obviously wish for more days in a week, but I can wish that maybe there was a little bit less of the direct, hey, this show's on while this show is on, because it makes it harder to follow. But yeah, like I said, solid show. Very, very happy for Impact. A lot of positive moves made here. And if we'll probably talk about them again come Bound for Glory time.
So that's the review of Slammiversary. Let's do another quick review in terms of what's been happening in the G1 since we did our preview of it on last week's show. I'll just run through the current standings and the blocks first. Obviously, we won't go every single match because there has been a grand total of 40 matches since that started. So we won't go through every single one beat by beat. But the current standings are, so in the A block, both the A block and B block have had 3 matches each. In terms of each of their wrestlers have had 3 matches. In the C and D block, they've only had 2. Their next show is on Sunday, so wait and see what happens there. But currently in the A block, it is Sonada leading the way, so the world champion with a perfect record, 3 victories for him. He's followed by, speaking of Noah again, Kaito Kiyomiya is in second place on 5 points, 2 wins and a draw. Followed, surprisingly, with the other 2 by Chase Owens and Gabe Kidd on 4 points each. Then you have Ren Narita on 2 draws and a defeat, which is the same with Shota Umino, 2 draws and a defeat for him. Then there's Yota Tsuji, 2 defeats and a draw on 1 point. And right at the bottom of the A block is Hikuleo, who is yet to score a single point. On the B block, go ahead.
Just real quick, I'm surprised that I've seen other Tongans get victories and Hikuleo is not one of them.
no. We can talk a few bits and pieces about some of the action here, and well, at least our initial impressions of at least some of the workers, besides some of the matches to look out for. But over on the B block, unsurprisingly leading the way is Kazuchika Okada with 6 points. Then there are 3 guys behind him on 4 points each, which are Taichi, Will Ospreay, and Yoshihashi. Then on 2 points, we have Tungaloa, Kenta, and the Great Okan. And then right on the bottom, yet to score, is El Phantasmo. C block, only two people that have got a perfect record so far, David Finlay and Evil. Then we have Mikey Nichols, Aaron Hanare, Eddie Kingston, and Tama Tonga on 2 points each. And then right at the bottom, both on 0 points, Shingo Takagi and Tomohiro Ishii. And then in the D block, again, 2 people leading the way with a perfect score, Jeff Cobb and Zack Sabre Jr., followed by Hiroshi Tanahashi, Tetsuya Naito, Hiroki Goto, and Shane Haste on 2 points each. And then Alex Coughlin and Toru Yano currently yet to score. So that's the current standings. In terms of impressions just of the tournament so far and people to look out for, from my perspective, it started very slowly. I think both opening nights of the show were a bit wishy-washy, and that is unfortunately due to that. I probably wouldn't have felt that way, except for the fact there was a lot of great wrestling on that weekend. There was some absolute bangers in terms of, as we'll talk about soon in Collision, where you had the FTR and Bullet Cup Gold match, and you had this Miyamoto and Nakajima match from Noah, and you had Omega versus Vikingo from the AAA show, and the crazy Pentagon versus QT Marshall match from that same show as well. So yeah, it was just a really bumper weekend of great matches, and nothing much from the first weekend of the G1 really caught me in the same way. The only thing that did, to a degree, well, 2 matches kind of stood out, which were Umino versus Narita, which went to a 20-minute time limit draw. And
yeah, I was going to say that should be watched.
Yeah, that should definitely be watched. I would say it's kind of like got quite a polarizing reaction, but I would recommend Will Ospreay versus Taichi. I thought that was a very good match. Not like the greatest of all time, but I think they told a really interesting story with that one. From night 2, I think the only thing that maybe you'd want to go check out is Kingston versus Takagi.
Yeah, and I would say if you're going to check out Kingston, check out his post-match stuff as well. He's really, like, you can tell that this is where his heart is. You know what I mean? Like, this kind of presentation is what he always wanted to be doing. And it's fun to see him living out his dream like that.
I'd say night 3 of the G1 was an absolute train wreck. And I wouldn't recommend pretty much any match from that show apart from maybe Yoshihashi, Will Ospreay. And that was
How are you liking the Yoshihashi run?
He's fine. You know he's not going to like get super far, but like he's got a couple of wins so far, but he will drop down the order soon enough. But you know he's fine. He's always been definitively solid. So, yeah, and the rest of the stuff I think is pretty skippable. I thought Sonada and Umino, I was expecting a lot more from that one. I think basically anything that Kenta, Tungaloa, and Hikuleo have done so far this tournament have been absolute trash. And they probably, all 3 of them probably shouldn't be in this tournament when you've got guys like Filthy Tom Lawler sitting on the sidelines. So, you know, that wasn't
like the Gabe Kidd, just the wild presentation of him.
It's going to be hit and miss. I think that I can understand the story of them because the story they have going into it of being angry with New Japan, that they just want to go in there and cause destruction. And the anger and resentment is causing them to lose focus. But now Kidd is winning most of his matches, so I don't know whether that story, they're trying to tell 2 stories of that anger potentially costing them or making them lose focus, but then also trying to have Gabe Kidd win matches as well. So I think that it's going to be a bit of a lopsided thing. But I think his most recent stuff has been better than how it started. I wasn't so keen on the Chase Owens one, and the match with Hikuleo I thought was bad as well. So Had on the fourth night, which was up until today, the best night of the show so far. I would say definitely 100% go out of your way to watch Shingo Takagi versus Aaron Hanare. That was an absolutely fantastic match. Because those two have just excellent chemistry with each other. Goto versus Naito is one worth checking out as well. And then if you also have time, the main event of Ishii versus Tama Tonga is pretty good as well. But yeah, I don't think there was actually like a bad match really on the second night.
That's good because
Night,
I'll be honest, I'm a couple nights behind at this point, but I have enjoyed specifically keeping an eye on the new Three Musketeers and just watching other things. Like I don't know why Tonga Loa getting victories and freaking Hikuleo is not.
I mean, he only got the first victory. He only got that first win over Kenta, which I think
right. But even then, like, would you put him over Kenta? Like,
I mean, at this point, Kenta's like DOA. He's washed in the great. Like I only say that that Tanahashi is pretty washed. He's nowhere near as washed as Kenta is washed. He can't do jack shit anymore. So
I think that's just a loss of heart.
No, he's just old. His body's destroyed. I think that's pretty much it.
How old is he?
Kenta. Let's see. How old is Kenta? Let's see if I can find. Kenta is 42.
I guess go 42 at that pace.
Yeah, and working that style for from Noah to All Japan to Ring of Honor, doing all that stuff. Like the style that he worked pretty much wrecked his body in many ways. So
shame, man. But
I'm not surprised. I mean, we'll talk about somebody else who's a similar age to him that I also feel might be a little bit will definitely pass his peak when we get to Blood and Guts. But I think that he's definitely not at that level anymore. But I haven't actually watched the fifth night so far, but from all accounts, or at least like some people that I follow on Twitter that I can trust to know what matches are good or not good, 100% check out Shota Umino versus Kaito Kiyomiya. Apparently, it's in many people's eyes, it's the best match of the tournament so far. And in
good for Shooter.
In some people's eyes as well, they said that's the best Umino match they've ever seen. So that'll be good to see. But then I've also heard other people saying that Okada versus Taichi was the best match of the night as well. So yeah, definitely check out both of those ones. And
I know Ospreay claims to have pulled out Noah Kenta, but did he? I guess we will have to see. Yeah. Again, big weekend for wrestling. I'll eventually catch up on all of this, but I'm actually enjoying keeping tabs on this, and it kind of makes me, I'm not gonna say it makes me miss the time before AEW, because I think the monopoly was bad, but I miss being able to be like, okay, New Japan is the only other major organization to focus on, because stuff like this is always fun to track and to see guys coming into their own. I think Ren Narita and Shota Umino are gonna fight forever. I think Yota Tsuji will be the leader for the next several years. And you still got Okada, and you still got whatever few years you can get at Tanahashi and Naito. Like, I think they're in a good place with the guys they have right now.
I think it's interesting that everyone says that Tsuji is the clear standard bearer for this next generation of New Japan. I don't know what I would think about like the idea that you're putting all your eggs behind this guy, and he's been back for a couple of months now. He hasn't won a single singles match yet. Like he lost against Sonata in the title match, and he hasn't won a single match yet in G1. So because he fought Sonata in the main event of today's show, and he lost. So my prediction of him going through with the idea that, clearly he's a main guy and they should push him heavily is basically falling by the wayside. But, okay, he's going to need to win pretty much all of his matches now to have any hope of getting into the next round. So wait and see. I mean, they seem to be telling the story they seem to be telling is that Narita, Umino, and Tsuji are all going to draw with each other because that's what they've pretty much done so far. So we'll wait and see on that front. But yeah, I'd say that his booking or his position has been the most strange for me so far out of everybody. But that's the current G1 update. There's going to be plenty more, and we'll be back to refer back to it next week as well, see where we are, because we'll have a much clearer idea about who's probably likely to go through and who's not at that point. So we've done some reviews. Let's do a preview with a little caveat to start with. So we're going to now be talking about Death Before Dishonor. Now we are recording this on the afternoon of the 21st, Friday the 21st of July. The show is taking place in the evening of the 21st of July. So we, at the moment, will be giving our predictions for this show, knowing full well that because Tony's in Brazil and has really crappy internet, that this show probably will not go out until after Death Before Dishonor has finished. So you'll probably know the results by the time you hear this, but we're still going to preview anyway, and you can basically confirm whether we were right or wrong. So let's go through it. So we've got 12 matches, which they somehow managed to cobble together from a show which had absolutely zero build, pretty much, until. But they've kind of won me over with some of these matches. I'm not gonna lie, so I'm probably am gonna order this show. So, but let's talk about it from top to bottom, starting with the pre-show matches. So we have none of these ones really spring out to me as anything that exciting, but it's Action Andretti and Darius Martin versus the Workhorsemen of Anthony Henry and JD Drake. Just have the babyfaces win, probably.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't. This was a fun part of a four-way last night, but I think that I can see the babyfaces winning. I'd also prefer to see the Workhorsemen win it because they are likely to be a longer tag team. Because as soon as Dante's back, whenever that happens, I can't imagine Andretti and Darius is going to be a thing.
We have Layla Hirsch versus Trish Adora. Both of them are getting relatively pushed on the show. I'd say Trish Adora's slightly less so because they had her suffer defeat to Utami Hayashishita.
Good match. Go out of your way to see it. Yeah. If you're into women's wrestling, I would say go out of your way to see it.
Yeah, we might have to have a discussion about women's wrestling when we get to Dynamite as well, but we'll save it for now. But I'd say Layla Hirsch probably gets the victory here.
Yeah, that makes sense because she hasn't lost a single match yet. I really enjoy Trish Adora though, and I hope that she can get some wins soon.
We're going to have AR Fox versus Shane Taylor. Shane Taylor just falling short in the tournament to determine who would challenge Samoa Joe for the television championship. AR Fox is going to be getting a shot on Dynamite against Orange Cassidy for the international championship. So I think you probably want to have AR Fox win this because there are some kind of interlink between Ring of Honor and AEW.
So my thing is, only one of these guys is going to be on TV Wednesday in a major match. So obviously AR Fox is going to win. It feels like Taylor should be doing more, but maybe he's not signed yet,
And then the other match is Josh Woods and Tracy Williams in a pure wrestling rules match. I think this is just like a preview for the pure match we're going to have on the main card. And you'll probably have Josh Woods win. Tracy Williams, I don't think is just there to be a guy to job to other people and be somewhat of a name. But Josh Woods is somewhat protected as part of the collective he's in.
Yeah, I would say Josh Woods absolutely gets the win. He ran through a guy last night, and I think he's the next challenger for the pure title.
Now moving on to the main card, start with some matches that are slightly less important. So we have Commander versus Gravity, a singles match, which I imagine is just going to be lucha.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're ever going to hit the ground.
I love the match that just takes place on the ropes, like just on the top rope the entire time until one of them hits a big move off of it and pins them in the ring afterwards. But yeah, all the rest of the match just takes place on the ropes. That'd be great. But I imagine you go Commander. he's been more prominently featured. So
Yeah, he wrestled Chris Jericho. I imagine he wins. But of course, there's been 100 jokes. I want to see Gravity against Pac. We'll get there.
got a fight without honor 6-man tag match. The Righteous of Vincent Dutch and Stu Grayson against the Dark Order of Evil Uno, Alex Reynolds and John Silver. It's quite an interesting one because out of all the ones that go, all the matches going into this one arguably has the most comprehensive story, which all started back with Stu Grayson turning his back on the Dark Order to join the Righteous, citing that the Dark Order was not vicious and intense enough anymore, that he had to move with people that were more of a sadistic mindset. And so ever since then, in the last couple of weeks, Evil Uno has been coming out with chairs and even used a chair at one point on just some random jobber guy. So I think that the story they're telling is fight without honor, which basically means it's going to be no DQ. So I think that, yeah, they're going to see that level of aggression, and I think there's a good possibility that we see the merging of both sides following this match.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. I had said this. I do a Ring of Honor podcast now on Love Wrestling on their Twitch platform. Yeah, I want to see them merge. I want to see them like do the BCC. We're gonna bleed together and then we're gonna team. I think the Righteous Dark Order, if we're just gonna merge the names for the sake of it, it's a great way to get back to what this should have been. Listen, the Brody tragedy was horrible, and it changed course for that whole group. But I really want to see them shift gears because they've gone as far as they can go with the lovable loser identity, and now they need to move. And whether there's a leader or not, if there was going to be one, I would really hitch my wagon to Vincent because he's got that wonderful. Not that this is wonderful, but I was gonna say wonderful Manson-esque, but like he feels like a cult leader, and it fits for the gimmick, and I'd like to see that shine through, and I want to see them go on a tear, man. I want to see them really beat people down, beat up, whomever the world champion is, beat up people in AEW. I think this is the best step for the team, and I do hope they go with the merging of all competitors here.
For the sake of that, I think that you probably should have the Dark Order win this then, because they need to prove themselves to Stu Grayson.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it going as well.
Yeah, so I'll go with the Dark Order winning.
Well.
Another 6-man match, which I think is a lot more easy to predict. The Mogul Embassy, Brian Cage, Bishop Corn, and Corn. God, it's hard to pronounce. And Toa Leona, the 6-man tag champions, will be defending against Master Wato, Ryusuke Taguchi, and Leon Ruffin. It's another thrown together group of decent wrestlers for the Mogul Embassy to tear their way through, pretty much. So, yeah, 6-man titles are staying right where they are, I believe.
Yeah, I think it might be the most predictable match on the show. I don't see a chance in hell for the other team. I like Watto. I like Taguchi, and I thought Leon Ruff in NXT was fun, but this just seems weird. So I expect to see the champion stay.
So now move on to probably the 5 matches that you would be buying this show for if you are. So we have the 4-way match for the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. The Lucha Brothers will be defending against the Kingdom, Matt Taven and Mike Bennett. Best friends of Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, and Aussie Open, Carl Fletcher and Mark Davis. First of all, great to see Mark Davis back in action after the injury that he suffered earlier this year. So nice to have that back and nice to have Aussie Open back. There's really not really a wrong decision you can make with this. All teams would be great Ring of Honor Tag Champions. I am putting my flag in the ground for the Kingdom to win the titles here.
There's not a wrong decision you can make here, and really, there's an argument that can be made for every team. I would say the weakest of the arguments would go to the Best Friends, who I think should win just because I want them to win something. If they go with the Kingdom, I think they have gone with the safest choice, and I think they're looking long-term Ring of Honor future. And then I look at Lucha Bros and Aussie Open, and I'll say right now, I think Aussie Open gets the win. I think Tony's going to strap up the tag team he signed in their first official match as a team under the banner. But I also wanted to throw this out there. If the Lucha Brothers manage to win, I think there's a good chance we see the title change hands in the main event.
Okay. We'll definitely talk about that as well, and also talk about main event stuff, because I don't think the main event is what you think is going to be the main event, but we'll talk about that.
Oh, I would don't get me wrong. I would love to be wrong, but they're not making me feel any sort of way about it.
But yeah, as I say, I don't have a problem with any of the teams winning. I think there's benefits to all of them, and I'm sure this is going to be a great match because of it. But I would say that I'm going with the Kingdom just because they've demonstrated the most consistency on being, like, they're pretty much every single week they're on TV, they're on the show, they're fighting somebody. I think having that as a presence on your TV, just making sure the titles are prominent and present at all times, I think is the smart way forward. I think they've kind of demonstrated so much loyalty to the product and wanting to promote it and get it over that I think that I don't say they've deserved it, but they deserve it because, like, let's say you should put the titles on the people that you think will do the best job. But I think they've proven that they are worthy of holding it again. So that'll be my choice.
Yeah, again, I think if they go with the Kingdom, they are making a statement and saying we are going with this team for the long haul because we are setting an identity for Ring of Honor.
Probably the matches of all of them that it's the most straightforward to predict, but I say there's still obviously a chance here. Samoa Joe versus Dalton Castle. I'm a massive fan of Dalton Castle. I think that he goes a little bit under the radar since Ring of Honor's come back, but I think he's done a lot of great work. And I think that he could have a really good match with Samoa Joe. I would be shocked as hell if he hit a bangerang on him, but hit a bangerang on Shane Taylor.
He went on Shane Taylor. Shane Taylor's a pretty big boy.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty obvious that Joe will get the victory here. It just doesn't feel like, after a short, like, concise tournament, that would be the person that ends up dethroning Samoa Joe. It's like stranger things have happened, but I'd be pretty confident that Joe gets the victory here.
Given the fact that there's pretty much a Fightful Select report that suggests, yes, there was going to be a Shane Taylor and Dalton Castle match, but it would have taken place here because Joe was going to face originally Mark Briscoe, and it would have been Claudio Eddie Kingston. But when that got switched around, so did everything else. I would say Joe wins. There's an argument that this can go 12 minutes. This can go 12 seconds. It depends on what they want to give Joe. It depends on what they want to give Castle. Joe is killing it. He's on what I'm assuming will be one final run as a monster, and I'm really enjoying it. So I don't want to see that come to an end just yet. Samoa Joe gets the win.
So after that, we'll move on to Katsuyori Shibata versus Daniel Garcia in a pure match for the Ring of Honor Pure Championship. I think this is probably time that you finish off the Shibata run and you give Daniel Garcia the Pure Championship again. So I think that Shibata's run has been a success. He hasn't been like super prominent, but he shouldn't be wrestling that much because his brain was out of his body at some point a couple of years ago. So anything we get out of him is a bonus right now. So
Liger did that in '96 and wrestled for another 22 years.
Yeah. But I think that, it's all been really good so far. I'm sure this is going to be another really kind of mixture of hard hitting and submission style match. I just think that Garcia is getting super over right now. I think that he is worthy of holding the title again and bringing that on to AEW to give that a little bit of shine as well. So I'd say that you probably best move to go to Garcia now. But I don't think there isn't a wrong decision to make on this one.
I'm guessing the Shibata run's not over yet. There are still some names that he probably wants to face. I don't think he's had a match with Joe. I don't think he's, I think there's plenty of people that can wrestle Katsuyori Shibata. And I think that they appear to be picking up the JAS drama again, and I don't know if Garcia winning this title will help that, unless the move is just going to be, nope, I won this title, I'm a wrestler, this group is done, move on. But I guess that we'll have to wait and see.
I don't necessarily think the Shibata run is over. I think that this title run is over, because if he's going to have a match with Joe, surely that would be for the television title.
That is true. So you could move on. I just want to see him in Ring of Honor for as long as possible.
So then we have the two matches that will probably vie for the main event slot. I personally am going to go with the one that I think shouldn't be the main event, which would be Claudio Castagnoli versus Puck for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Despite this inevitably going to be a great match, because look at the two people involved, this is going to be awesome. I think the mixture of the fact that Puck is, by all accounts, third choice to have this match, because it was originally supposed to be Eddie Kingston, then Eddie Kingston decides that he's going to go to the G1. Then it's Mark Briscoe, and Mark Briscoe unfortunately gets injured, and so Puck is drafted in. We'll talk a bit more about what happened in Blood and Guts that led to this coming about. But yeah, as I say, this is going to be no doubt an awesome match. But I think it's as I say, just because Puck is third choice doesn't mean that it necessarily means he's not going to win the title. I think that they still will go with Claudio, because I think the story is eventually Claudio losing it to Kingston at a show going forward. But I think that there certainly wouldn't be any harm of giving the title to Pac, even if it was for a short run. But yeah, that's like just really looking forward to this match, and I've got Claudio winning in my book.
I'm gonna guess exactly what you said. Kingston beats Claudio at some point is probably still the plan. But I look at it and go, you just give the belt to Pac and let him be a Ring of Honor guy. He fits that description of guy who signed to AEW, and while he's done a lot of major matches, has always had trouble fighting for screen time. Like they'll go through waves of like, okay, he's one of our top guys, and then I don't see him for 7 months. I'm gonna go with Claudio. By the way, they have not wrestled since Antonio Cesaro defeated Adrian Neville in like some 2012 episode of NXT for the United States title, which I think is crazy that these two were in the same promotion for a long time and didn't touch. But been 11 years, and I'm ready to see what they can do now. I'm hoping it'll be a great match, but I'm also with you in the sense that I absolutely want the other match to main event the show.
And the other match we're talking about is Athena versus Willow Nightingale for the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship. I think that it should be, the reason why I want it to main event is I think it should be a recognition of the work that Athena has done since winning that title. The fact that she is on every Ring of Honor show. Of course, she's really on there just in squash matches and beating the shit out of like the random jobber of the week they bring in. But I think the story they've told is that like she is the dominant force, and then she went into the semi-finals of the Owen Hart tournament as confident as ever, because like she hadn't lost in about 50 matches prior to that. And then Willow Nightingale beats her and advances and ends up winning the Owen Hart tournament. Again, we'll talk about Collision, go back to there a little bit, but you know that happened over a week ago. But so yeah, and on the most recent episode of Ring of Honor, Athena showed a very less colourful, less happy-go-lucky figure that she had been showing, where she was paranoid and disruptive. She was very much against the idea of defending the title against Willow, and she's never, even though she's been a heel and she's been dominant and cocky and all this other stuff, she's never backed down from a challenge at all. And so the idea of her being very, very concerned and very much wanting to get out of the match with Willow means that she has gotten to like Willow beating her has really rattled her. And so, and Willow is still like, Willow's not super been aggressive in the same way Athena has. She's just playing up the fact that, yeah, I won this tournament, I beat you on the way, and so I'm just gonna do what I do again, beat you again, and gonna take your title. And she's still her very happy-go-lucky self, but she is her happy-go-lucky self and that kind of confidence knowing that she's already beaten Athena is really feeding into how insecure and worried that Athena is about this challenge again. So this will be the third in their series because they already fought for the Ring of Honor title a little while ago, which Athena did win, and then Willow beat her, as I mentioned, in the Owen Hart tournament. So this is the rubber match, and I think he could definitely go either way, but it might be time to crown Willow again.
I think you crown Willow. I think as much as she's become a fixture of Collision, and Athena has kind of just been Ring of Honor, I think you could swap those because I think it's time for Athena to face Stat. I think Willow, like Joe, can continue to be on Collision and also a champion of Ring of Honor. And I think it's a huge moment for her. I know she's, put a lot of time and effort into this. I know that she's kind of from around the area, if I do recall. So, the setting might be really cool for her. And again, it should main event because Athena's put in so much work. So much work. And she's really carried this brand. And I want to see her. Yeah, she's from Valley Stream. So that's like the upstate New York area. I think she should absolutely get the win here. And I think they should, they should make it the main event. Make a statement that says, hey, we value the stories that we tell. And we're going to show that by saying, even though Claudio is great, Pac is great, they haven't been the focal point of Ring of Honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is what Death for Dishonor looks like. That's our predictions for it. You'll know probably by now whether we were right or wrong, but we'll definitely be checking out the show. So, and hoping that it looks as good as it does on paper. Obviously, we still want them to, hopefully, between now and the next pay-per-view cycle, get some actually more stories being told in between that and doing some more interesting stuff. But at the end of the day, they've got a lot of really good wrestlers that they can put in really good matches. So I'm still going to check it out. So that is Death for Dishonor. And let's get into some more kind of newsy news topics. Speaking a little bit of Ring of Honor and a lot more of AEW, Ian Riccaboni has signed a multi-year deal with AEW to remain as a commentator. He filled in for Kevin Kelly, who's of course going to be pretty much occupied the rest of up until August with the G1. He filled in on Collision alongside Nigel McGuinness, did a very, very good job. I thought he was excellent on commentary throughout that show. And I'm very, very happy that he's got this multi-year deal because he is one of the best commentators, one of the best play-by-play commentators in the business right now.
Yeah, and I do believe, forgive me if I'm not completely on board. I do believe Sean that reported he was kind of like the immediate back, like, hey, if Kevin Kelly doesn't want this, or maybe even, hey, we'll give you this, and he said, well, Kevin Kelly is available. So I think Riccaboni absolutely deserves the credit he's getting.
Yeah, that's cool. That was it's good to see a guy like him being signed permanently because I think that I think at the moment commentary is actually doing pretty well, like across the US. Like I know there's a bit of there's always a bit of hit and miss stuff with WWE side of things, but I think especially the Bloodline stuff is bringing out a lot of the best of Michael Cole. So that's in a good place, and I think AEW just in general has the best commentary team in the US right now, and Riccaboni just adding to that is just, that's just a great addition to an already stacked team.
Yeah, and I think there's an argument to be made that Kevin Kelly and Riccaboni should have been in this position a long time ago, and Ian's still young enough that he can do it for quite a long time. And I look forward to seeing what he does.
Absolutely. So let's move on to some WWE news. So there was a bit of a injury scare that was sweeping through social media for a little while about Bayley, because there was a moment in a house show match where she was in a tag team match ran across the ring to go after her opponent and pretty much just fell on her knee and just went down, like no contact, no move, anything like that. Just went down, grabbed her knee. Referee put up the X sign. She gets taken out, and ever since then, there's been one tweet from her which basically said she's going to be fine. And from that point on, we've pretty much had no update. So, do we take the sign of no news is
no
good
news
news?
is good news. I think we absolutely have to. And again, I think the takeaway from this is it's never the ladder matches. It's
Except
never
Dante Martin. In which case,
Dante,
it was very much a ladder match.
He's the exception that proves the rule, though, because like you could throw people and everything, and then Brian will do an elbow drop, or Bayley will run, or Kevin Nash will run, and it's like, oh, they're injured, So hopefully, no news is good news, and she's doing all right. But it's a very scary moment. Like they can't afford to lose Bayley right now. But you say so.
It would be a real shame, and especially when it's that kind of moment, your initial thing is to fear the worst, because, like, as I say, just nobody touching her, it would just mean that if it was serious, it would mean that, like, that's ligament damage,
knee acted up again, yeah.
And if it was the same knee as well, that could be another year on the shelf. And I already think that, not to the degree that some other people I've heard say, but I think that it has slowed her down already quite a bit in terms of maybe taken some time off of her career that she could have had if she hadn't suffered the injury. So if it was a recurrence of that, then yeah, I wouldn't want to posit the idea of like retirement, but she probably would have to change up her style at the very least quite a bit if she was to come back. Like, you don't want to risk any more of those injuries. I mean, look at Statlander, how much time she spent out with the same kind of injury. So
right.
And then we have more on the kind of NXT or the Performance Center side of things. We have a lot of new name trademarks to talk about. Obviously, Tony loves to bring these up, so let's honor him with some more trademark talk in terms of. I think you've got the list of names that we have here.
I do. So because this is the main one that I can say, I know who this is. There's Carmen Petrovic, and she has not appeared on television yet, but has definitely done a lot of NXT house shows. She was originally, I guess not originally, her name is Monica Clasara, and she's a black belt. She appears to be very excited about bringing the karate side of things into her character. I cannot remember if she's the one that played Vaughn's psychiatrist for a couple weeks, but she'll be on our TV screen soon, as she's very right there and ready to make the move. Then we've got Tyson DuPont. Don't know if that's a name or not that's been on NXT Level Up. I know the name Izzy Dame will be on NXT Level Up tonight. This is forgive me here, Tyreek Igwe. That's Tyriek Igwe. Tyreek Igwe. There's Kaya Saint and there's Trey Bearhill. Listen, all these names sound so bland to me. It's all going to just depend on what we see from them in the ring. But it's good to see the next crop of superstars getting set up for their next stage.
That's pretty much the news side of things and the previews and reviews. So before we move on to the rest of the stuff, I might just throw a couple of other plugs out there. So we've also mentioned the Patreon, where you can support us on there's various tiers that you can go there. So over on patreon.com/smartcomoments, if you want to chuck a few bucks away, but there's also the $5 tier, which will give you, or $10 tier, should I say, that gives you access to the Darkcast, which are the extra special editions of the show that we do put behind a paywall. So you can access that stuff to get a few bits of extra content every month, as well as the $50 tier, which is the Pick Your Poison tier, where you can basically make us your performing monkeys and tell us to watch something or review something or do this
Within
podcast
reason.
or do anything like that. Just tell us what you want us to do, and it's open season. give it, yeah, within reason, of course, but like, yeah, but it's, yeah, just let us know what you want us to do, and we'll put something together for it. So that's there, but there are other ways you could support us monetarily as well, which is, of course, the Redbubble and TeePublic, the merchandise shops, so you can pick up a bit of merchandise there. And while I'm here as well, might as well plug fanboysanonymous.com, which is our sister site, where Tony puts together a lot of stuff based around movies and television and video games, comic books, all this other stuff. He's been doing the Blueprint project most recently, where he's been going through things like Batman and Power Rangers and all this other great stuff, and telling his own stories and rewrites and how he would approach the subject matter. So check all that stuff out. It's all super great material if you are interested in that geek culture side of things. And but if you are interested in geek culture, you probably are also interested in professional wrestling. So let's talk a little bit more about that stuff. So weekly recap. We'll go back to Collision to start off with, because that was a pretty big show, including 1 hour long match, the first of 2 hour long matches that AEW produced this week. So let's talk about that tag title match between FTR successfully defending against Bullet Club Gold in their 2 out of 3 falls match. I thought this for me right now is my AEW match of the year.
I want to throw a couple things out here first. On a personal side, this is where I bring up the sucks that the shows run concurrently, because I'm watching Slammiversary with my right eyeball and watching, this great match with my left, because I couldn't look away. And it wasn't until about 45 minutes in that I said to my buddy I was watching with, I said, oh, they have only gotten the one fall, haven't they? This was the best match I've seen in a long time. Meltzer called it the best tag team match on American television ever that he's seen. And he's seen a lot of tag team matches on American television. I have to agree with him. This was nuts. This was like, growing up, I was a fan of Benoit, Angle, Edge, and Mysterio. That was like a fun sprint compared to this. This was like, kids will be getting into the business because of the stretch of shows that are happening right now. Kids will be getting into the business because of a match like this. And I gotta say, I didn't think Bullet Club Gold was my favorite thing. I was a little worried that maybe Jay White is a little better than a lot of it, because he was headlining the Tokyo Dome, but he's embraced this, and this tag team with Juice has been way more fun than I could have ever imagined. And this was a phenomenal wrestling match with just emotion pouring out of these people, and the moves. I'm going to let you do a bit more of the play-by-play because you're very good at that. But my God, I loved this match so much.
I mean, I don't really have the most in-depth notes in front of me, but just from what I can recall, just from the outset, you have these guys going at it with each other, but you obviously have a little bit of Jay White and Juice Robinson just rolling out of the ring at the start of it in order to soak up a little bit of time and also soak up a little bit of heat, and then FTR get into it as well. They end up getting the first fall. White and Robinson breaking up a Shatter Machine attempt. Robinson hitting the right-handed God, and then Jay White hitting the Blade Runner on Cash and gets the pin there to go 1-0 up. Then that was about 20 to 30 minutes in, and then another 15-20 minutes go past until FTR managed to hit the Shatter Machine on Juice Robinson and get the pin there. They pretty much had hit every single move possible outside of the Shatter Machine on Jay White, and Jay White kept kicking out, which I like because they are keeping him strong. They know that he's the stand-up, the guy that has the biggest potential moving forward out of him and Juice, even though I think the Juice has been phenomenal in this role. And I love the team, and I think they're doing really well together, but Jay White is clearly the guy that has world title potential out of those two. So protecting him, making sure he's not taking pins. And so then they move forward, just a great closing stretch. certainly near falls. The one spot that immediately sticks in my mind is FTR go for the whole superplex from the top rope into the frog splash that they do. That like Cash goes up to hit it, and Jay White gets the knees up, and then Juice Robinson flies in from the other side and hits a frog splash on Dax instead. Another great near fall off that. Eventually, it comes down to they lock in the like dual sharpshooters, but they can't hold on to it because it's been going so long, and their knees and their backs get buckle, and so they let go of the holds. But then Dax has the brainwave of lowering the brace on his knee, so he can essentially hold Robinson there, lean back even further, put like his legs a little bit higher up so he can lean back even further, and Juice just has to submit. And so yeah, pretty much about 58 minutes in, FTR get the 2-1. They retain the championships. They went to shake hands afterwards, but then Juice and Jay just spat at the floor next to him. One other thing that I actually want to mention about this match in particular, beyond just how absolutely awesome it was. So there was a thing we reported out last week about this list of rules and the list of things that you can and cannot do for AEW moving forward. I'm pretty sure they broke every single one of those rules in this match, because
but they got the spitting right. Hey, they
there was
spit on
spitting.
them.
There were shots to the back of the head. There were like fighting in the crowd. There were suplexes onto the floor. There were pile drivers. There were power bombs. There was just all this other stuff. So yeah, they pretty much said, oh yeah, that rule those rules don't really apply to us in this one.
Yeah, maybe it's like a case by case basis where it's like,
yeah,
all right, we're gonna let FTR and Jay White and Juice Robinson do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out for the other people.
But that was awesome, and this is another, I think, feather in the cap of like establishing that Collision is kind of the wrestling show for them. This is the show where you're going to see the not the Dynamite, you're going to see bad matches, but this is where you see the absolute bell to bell great stuff. And this was definitely the pinnacle of it this week. But I think pretty much the other two main matches they had on the show as well were also of a high standard, which were the two Owen Cup Memorial finals. So you had Willow Nightingale, as mentioned before, defeated Ruby Soho to win the trophy and the belt. So yeah, I thought that this was a solid match. It was hard for them because they had to directly follow that match, and so the crowd was pretty tired. But I think by the end of it, they got into it. Ruby tried to use the spray cans to advantage, and almost like also handed it to Willow and did the whole Eddie Guerrero thing of, oh, she used it on me, or she's going to use it on me. But Willow was able to overcome that, hit the Doctor Bomb, and get the victory. So I'm pretty happy with that as a result.
I agree. I think that Ruby cannot be in the finals next year unless she's going to win.
I like this story of her being the consistent runner-up, because eventually she's going to win, and then it's going to be a huge moment for everyone. I think that if she does win, she should be a babyface by that point, or she'd be using that victory to turn babyface.
I think she'll be babyface by next year, because I can't see the Outcast lasting that long. But I could see her. I definitely think if she's in the finals next year, she's winning the thing.
Yeah, but I think that's a good moment. I think you're fine kind of delaying that gratification for her, and I think it makes sense because she's a heel as well. You don't really want to have that big moment for her just yet. But Willow gets the win, so that's great, and that leads very comfortably onto her title match later on tonight. But then the other match, there was a squash for the House of Black in between that as well, but we don't really need to talk about that too much. Or Kings of the Black Throne, more accurately, of Brody King and Malachi Black being two guys, and Andrade came out at some point as well. But the main event was the men's final of CM Punk versus Ricky Starks. Again, another solid match between these two. And I thought that, so we got to the finish of Ricky Starks rolling up CM Punk, grabbing the ropes at the end, last minute, to get the victory, steal it away. So pretty heelish way to get the victory. And then even more heelish, he stole the title from Jushin Thunder Liger and then ran out of the ring and ran out of the building. It was like,
I don't know why they bothered to bring him in. Like, you really brought the legend out for 2 seconds of, hey, wait, that's the trophy.
I mean, I thought it made it better really, because even though it's because everyone has that reaction of like, oh, you just brought him in for this, but I'm just thinking like, well, you had this legendary figure in Owen Hart's backstory come out to do it, and Ricky Starks says, oh yeah, I don't care about that, just give me the trophy, I'm getting out of here type thing. I thought that's good at establishing him as this is definitely a heel turn. So I think
Which I
that
don't like, by the way. I think that's a mistake.
I
I
think
think, especially with the way that Punk is viewed, giving him an out right now to actually, unless you're gonna go full. I know we talk a lot about Brett. We're gonna talk about like Punk and FTR and them, but unless you're gonna go full Brett, where it's like I got screwed and you're hoping that people won't give a shit. Like I think it was weird to give him an out to be like, hey, I just got fucked out of the victory. That being said, I haven't seen CM Punk have an out and out bad match in the 2 years he's been back with AEW. I really just enjoy his style, and I hope we have him for quite a while.
yeah, I think that this is good at least establishing that there's going to be an ongoing feud between Starks and Punk off the back of this. Again, there could be many different twists and turns that you go with it, so it might not be as clear like heel and face dynamics as we might have seen before, but yeah, I think that there's at least a sign to say that Starks could go in that heel direction. But I think they've left enough flexibility one way or the other that they can change course depending on the crowd's reaction to it. But yeah, I think the match was good. I think Starks winning is a good move just to give him something to help further establish him. And yeah, I think it's good to have Punk have somebody to feud with directly now, because pretty much all the stuff that he's been doing so far has just been, match here, match there, tournament stuff going on. Now he's going to be a bit more. He has a bit more of a meaty feud to get into, which I think is something that Collision probably needs now.
I agree.
So that was Collision, really good show. I guess we'll save Dynamite and Blood and Guts till last. So let's talk about the WWE side of things. Not really much to report from the SmackDown side of things because Roman Reigns wasn't there, and so there was a bit of a holding pattern for the Bloodline stuff, and the rest of the stuff on SmackDown kind of doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I know Shotzi shaved her head because she is showing solidarity. What was told in the story about how she can't be controlled by damage control, but the real reason was because she's showing solidarity with her sister who is going under treatment for breast cancer. So really have to show solidarity and credit credit to Shotzi for taking that step. It's very brave move.
Just a real quick correction. I do believe it's liver cancer that has now spread to at least one of her lymph nodes. So there is a GoFundMe for Shotzi's sister, Shawnee, and if you feel so inclined, please donate. I know that Karen Cross tweeted out, Fightful reported on it. It's a very cool move for Shotzi. And honestly, if we just even take that aspect out of it, good to see them doing something with her. Like, it's nice to see that they're trying, even if it is just for this one sentimental moment. That happened. There was a fatal four-way that occurred that will basically lead to the next challenger for Austin Theory. Santos Escobar defeated Grayson Waller, Butch, and
AJ, right?
And yes, AJ Styles, because Karen Cross took out the OC.
Because that feud will never end.
I can't believe that they're just we're running the clock on AJ, no cross pun intended. What are we doing? Like, that's not what I'd be doing with him, but it's cool to see Santos get the win. Tonight there will be a four-way between Sheamus, LA Knight, Rey Mysterio, and a fourth Cameron Grimes, and the winner of that will face Santos next week, and I assume face Theory at SummerSlam because they're trying to stack that card for Ford Field. Solid stuff. Do you have any particular individual that you'd like to see face Theory at the pay-per-view?
Well, I don't want to see Theory at the pay-per-view, full stop, but it probably should be LA Knight,
It
really.
should be LA Knight. This seems like a safe bet to
But
give
I'm
him
hearing
this.
but I'm seeing a lot of chatter on Twitter about saying that they're super behind Santos at the moment, or behind the LWO. So it'll be one of those two. And really, realistically, as long as it's not Theory, I'm not fussed who's holding that title. So
The only other thing I want to talk about from last week's SmackDown is a quick segment where Bobby Lashley pulls up in a limousine and tells the Street Profits he's ready to talk. How do you feel about
her business confirmed. Don't
that?
think.
It feels like it. I'd like to see MVP back in the mix because I just think he's a great mouthpiece for this. But I like the idea of giving the Profits a new wrinkle. And honestly, it coincides with maybe Bianca kind of being in full blown, fuck off, I want my title. Because that was the other portion of this show, right? It was Charlotte and Asuka.
Yeah, it's going to
And
be
go ahead.
it's going to be the interesting thing is that so Bianca's going to, if she does go into that direction, she's going to quote unquote turn heel as part of her business to go against Charlotte, and she's going to and in reality she's going to turn babyface and Charlotte, because Charlotte's never the babyface. So,
Right.
but at least that will give her a positive reaction, because she's obviously been a bit more lukewarm in recent times because of the Super Cena treatment that she's getting. So.
And I think I do want to commend this. I don't want to. Nothing really happened in the main event match, but I do want to commend that all of the women in the WWE Women's Championship picture right now are just showing in character just smarts. Like Charlotte goaded Bianca into, hey, I believe in you. And in fact, you're going to beat Asuka and face me. And Bianca said, yep, when I beat Asuka, I'll face you at SummerSlam. Charlotte goes to leave. Here's that, damage control plans on cashing in or whatever. And Charlotte says, on second thought, because I was right here and I heard what you said, I'm going to stay. And then again, like everybody, this is the kind of storytelling I like, because everybody's showing smarts and they're showing a determination to be champion. I think it's such an easy story to tell. I'm not going to say this is like the best thing ever, but like it's good to see these characters showing that being champion means something.
So that's kind of the SmackDown stuff out of the way. Let's talk a bit about Raw. So there's like
The exact opposite of what I just said. Cody Rhodes not as smart.
yeah, so there was just a continuation of the Cody and Brock stuff, where Brock beat up Cody for a little while and accepted the challenge for SummerSlam, and so yeah, that match is going to happen. We don't know what stipulation is going to be put onto that match just yet, but we know we're getting it. So yeah, that's happening.
They have really managed to just do nothing with Cody since WrestleMania. Like it's almost an art form, Callum. It's almost like, how have you managed to do nothing with this guy for nearly 6 months? I don't understand why Cody isn't doing the exact same thing as I just said with Charlotte and Bianca, where he's like, no, I want to fight you. Like, what is that? What?
It's just like it's the thing. Like, the men just don't get the same attention as the women. I'm joking. Nah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, but that's just it's just spinning the wheels. They've got a while to go until SummerSlam, so they're just gonna drag it out until they have to do the match again, because they've pretty much done everything they can do to each other, it feels like, because they've already fought each other twice in the last few months. So that's pretty much it. You had Riddle versus Gunther, which, again, I didn't watch it, but by all accounts was a better match than the one they had at Money in the Bank.
Gunther won decisively.
Yep, as he should. Then probably the most, I guess, noteworthy thing coming out of Raw was we have new women's tag team champions after Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville defeated Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez to capture the titles, thanks to bit of a distraction. Well, at the same distraction, Rhea Ripley attacking Rodriguez prior to the match, meaning that Rodriguez was suffering from a knee injury beforehand. So, yeah, so she was struggling. That allowed Green and DeVille to take advantage and get the victory. So, are you happy with the new tag titles?
Morgan and Rhea coming out of that. I'm very happy with Chelsea and Sonya winning, because it's specifically for Sonya for a minute. It's beyond time she was given even a courtesy championship run. There was a time where she was really doing her best to flesh out her character, and then she became, an authority and tried to flesh out her character in that way. I'm glad that these two are the two that will be able to float, because they're inconsequential enough that they could just show up on NXT for 2 months, but at the same time, they can easily plug them in to annoy Adam Pearce. It's a very strategic move that I enjoy, and it's just cool to see. Like, I've done a lot of articles since then about how, they're best. Like they've been close and tough enough, and it's a really cool moment to see like that all come full circle. And yeah, I think it's really nice that they're getting this moment. These titles themselves mean jack shit. So at that point, all you can do is say, cool, give them to people who you think deserve an accolade. But I think Chelsea and Sonya are doing their very best to be great characters.
Then we had a Viking rules match between Alpha Academy and Viking Raiders. Again, don't really watch WWE stuff, but from all accounts, people said that this was a lot of fun.
It depends on your definition of fun. I'm not. That's not me shitting on the match. It's just like I'm not gonna mince words. I don't care enough about this. Like, why is Maxine Dupree just in Alpha Academy, where she's doing Thea Hale, but like less excited? Like, it's weird what they're doing with her, and it's good to see the Vikings get the win in their signature match. But I'm pretty ready to see this go on.
We had Shayna Baszler beat Nikki Cross pretty much immediately, and then Ronda Rousey.
That's the downside to the Eric Young thing.
Yeah. And then Ronda Rousey said that they're going to fight at SummerSlam, so that moved on. And then you had Miz TV segment with Becky Lynch, and then Zoe and Trish attacked her afterwards, and so Trish is going to face Becky at SummerSlam only if Becky can beat Zoe Stark first.
And then if Becky loses, she has to get down on her hands and knees and say thank you, Trish, as well as getting thank you, Trish tattooed across her chest. I mean, really heavily, like, there's no way that's happening. But I like these silly stories.
Bronson Reed won a DQ over Shinsuke Nakamura thanks to Thomas Ciampa.
The most notable news of the week, Callum. He's big. And I'm not just saying that because a lot of people
He's not Babatunde big, is he? So.
He's not Babatunde big, but he is big enough that it's in his name now. You probably don't know what
he's now Big Bronson Reed.
He's now Big Bronson Reed. Okay. Just like how Dom is Dirty Dom, he now has it in the quotes, Big Bronson Reed.
Cool.
Because he's big. Honestly, the biggest takeaway from this, no pun intended, is that Ciampa came out for the DQ. Nakamura got upset with Ciampa, hit him, and then yelled at Byron backstage saying he's tired of people getting into his business. I didn't like the last time they turned Shinsuke heel. Maybe this is better.
Yeah, the last 4 or 5 times they tried turning Nakamura heel and face, and back to heel and face again. So yeah, we'll see. But I'm kind of just counting down the days until he decides I'll just come back to New Japan for a year or 2 and then retire.
Yeah.
And then in the main event, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens defended their tag team championship successfully against Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio. This is partly due to Liv Morgan attacking Rhea Ripley on the outside. Had Rollins come out as well to chase off Balor because they had a backstage brawl as well. Well, backstage brawl
Oh
during
yeah,
the
that's right. They're gonna fight at the pay-per-view. That was determined.
Yeah, so it's once again it's going to be Rollins versus Balor for the World Championship.
I know they're dragging it out, but I really hope they add some stipulations. Man,
there's a lot of
don't
rematches on the show.
Yeah, I don't even want to see just straight up Shayna versus Ronda. Like we should add some stipulations across the board.
You really want them to be in like the cage.
I think that they need to. Like I honestly don't think Ronda's doing anything after this. So I think they should probably do that and get it over with.
Well, no, I think that they should just have Shayna kill her in a couple of minutes, really. I think that would establish her the best, really, and also mean that we don't have to see the match that long. But,
that's true.
But yeah, so championships stay where they are in that one, but there was a title change that happened on NXT, which we'll get to. But over on NXT, favourite show of the week, of course. We had I'll just run through it pretty quickly, but you can dive in when you have a bit more thing to talk about. But there was a tag match. Los Lothario lost to Nathan Fraser and Dragon Lee, and they got into a shoving match afterwards.
Because you can't have good tag teams.
By all accounts, this was the best match on the show.
Probably. I'm not gonna lie. I think in a show like this, I tend to go. The main event was probably the best because it was the one where people were most intrigued. I take that approach with just this show because NXT is held to such a different standard.
Apparently, it certainly wasn't Gigi Dolan and Kiana James, which ended due to a bag being like tug of war over, and then Kiana James hits the 401k on the bag.
Yeah, and the referee doesn't stop anything.
So that's good. Not. Baron Corbin was surrounded by tiki torches and apparently looked at himself.
Okay, and not only did he look at himself, the version of himself that he was looking at was slightly taller. And everybody picked up on it. And it's just like, okay, so what is this going to be? I'll say this. I like where they're going with Corbin. I want Corbin so badly to just be serious. But I worry that they're going to fuck it up before he even gets the chance.
Was it very similar to like Luke seeing himself in the...
And it was taller Luke, yep.
Yeah. This is the obligatory Last Jedi Sucked part of the podcast.
There you go.
But I can change it up slightly because I always add my little caveat that Force Awakens sucked even worse. Hated that movie.
I don't normally add in, but I'll say Rogue One was the best of the most recent movies.
It's a low bar.
Low bar.
More shit. Here we go. Axiom and Scripps decided, Scripps decided, I'm not gonna team with this guy anymore. And they lost to Bronco Nima and Lucian Price, and apparently Scripps went off with those two, and it's going to be like their manager now or whatever.
It was very fluid. Like, I couldn't tell if they were on the same side, but it happened, right? Like, okay, I'm better with that than him being Scripps eating with Axiom, so whatever.
It was very good. I'm very happy they at least completely derailed any momentum that Dabba-Kato had to just have this moment happen afterwards. So not that Dabba-Kato was anything special, but like he was a big guy and decided, okay, he's just going to lose to these two, and then these two are just going to split up immediately.
Yeah, or Dabba-Kato.
He had the Tony D'Angelo coming back and doing the celebration with that and with members of the family, and then they chased off Gallus, and so they're going to fight for the tag title soon.
Yeah, Great American Bash, it's already signed. They will fight for the tag team championship. Fun segment, kind of explains all the swerving and whatnot. I just want the belts and the D'Angelos already. It's been well past time for them to be crowned, and hopefully we get something good out of it.
We had Thea Hale defeated Elektra Lopez very quickly with the Kimura, and then she challenged Tiffany Stratton, put her in the Kimura again, and forced her into signing up for the rematch, and the match will be a submission match.
When you have Brock Lesnar, I just want to say this. When you have Brock Lesnar on your roster, we couldn't have given her something else. Why the Kimura?
I think it's fine. Like she was taught by Gulak and
Right, but
Charlie
like
Dempsey.
my guess is that it allows for moments like we saw where Tiffany can still scream, okay, okay, I'll give you the match you want while also being in a submission. I
Mm.
think it's brilliant to give Tiffany Stratton a submission finisher where she won't have to rely on the moonsault all the time. And I definitely don't see her losing the title at the Great American Bash, but we'll get there when we get there.
See, I do, because
You
like
do.
I think you've done too much to this point. That if you have Thea Hale lose this, it's all been not worth it. You need to have Thea Hale win this match now, because she's made Tiffany Stratton tap out 3 or 4 times. Like she tapped out in the match. She had a visual win over Tiffany Stratton in the previous one. So you made a tap out here. You made a tap out in the build up to the first match. Like eventually, you just need to win. She needs to actually win the match. So
That is
I,
true, I might have to agree with you.
like say like I'd still say that they probably are going to have to strap thing, but I think at this point they like if it's me and I've done all this stuff leading up to it, I would just go, yeah, you just have to have her win now. Like move Tiffany Stratton up, she's fine, but like you got this person that you've built up with this one move, and if you can't win your match, which is a mission match built on the move that you've spent the last 2 months or so completely building up as the most devastating submission in the women's division, then what's the point?
I agree.
They had Eddie Thorpe lost to Aura Mensa thanks to Dominic
Okay.
Dijak coming out, or yeah, just Dijak coming out, and so they're going to set up that feud. Fair enough. Uh, Roxanne had an interview segment saying that she's going to, wire up and beat Blair Davenport. That's
I'm
fine.
really I'm really looking forward to it. Again, another one where I go, maybe a stipulation is needed here since they can't even be in the same room, but we'll get there. This should be fine, and I'm ready for Roxanne after this. Look, hometown or home state after this, get called up.
And the reason why pretty much everyone tuned into NXT this week, which was Wesley defending the North American Championship against Dominic Mysterio. Dominic gets the victory
This
to
was the right move.
seal championship. So there was a few things from this that we need to talk about beyond just Dominic getting his first, well, his first singles title in WWE. So there was this one clip that's going on through the internet of one move, which was Dominic pretty much lifting him up seemingly for a back suplex, lifting Lee up, and then something going awry and Lee getting dropped right on the back of his head.
Is that why
Everyone
everybody was
has
complaining about the end of the match where he wins?
I think
Because I had seen people
I,
calling
don't-
him dangerous, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I said, I
well,
didn't see
I think everyone jumped onto that about saying like this guy doesn't know how to work or anything along those lines. I think that there's multitude of reasons why that could have gone wrong, and let's face it, like experienced one out of those two. Wesley's been working for well over a decade, like, but mistakes do happen, and maybe it was just miscommunication where he thought he was going for some kind of throw. Wesley thought he was going for a back suplex, and so he over rotated and landed on the back of his head. So there's probably it's probably issues on both sides of things there, but yeah, a lot of people have jumped on that to demonstrate how he's not ready for even this kind of level of TV. But then you look at the ratings, and this was an absolute like smash rating success for NXT. I think there was about 840 odd thousand people tuned in for this main event segment, which was bigger
I'm
than.
gonna just be honest. I think people need to get the fuck. Not everything can be. We're very lucky to have the matches that we have across the board in wrestling. But like, let's face it, Dominic is an over character, and regardless of how he's over, he is somebody that like a lot of people are interested in. Even if it's just they're interested because when they see him, they're gonna see Rhea. A lot of people like seeing Dom, and you had to get to this point eventually. And it's not like they gave him the IC title, against Gunther, or even the US title. Like, you had to get to this point. He's been a major guy on the roster. Let's tell the truth here. For like 3 years, he came right in and had one of the most talked about matches at SummerSlam with Rollins, and never really departed from that level of status on the card. He just wrestled Cody Rhodes. Like, yeah, he got his ass kicked, but also he was put into a story with Cody. Dom is a star, and I think it's time to stop trying to avoid it from happening because it's already here. He's a star.
Yeah, I think the crowd reaction for this one spoke for itself, and yeah, it's a good thing for NXT because he'll be coming out on Raw now, holding that North American Championship, so it might get a few more eyeballs over onto the show, as was demonstrated by how it got eyeballs onto this match in the first place.
Oh, I
And
saw, not that you need this refresher, but I saw a lot of people going, well, what about Solo? They didn't strip Solo because he went to the main roster. They stripped Solo because the match was never actually legitimized. Yeah, that was silly too, but it's not apples to orange. It's not apples to apples here, you know?
yeah, and I think it also just lends credence to the idea of what Rhea's got a title, Dominic's got a title, Priest has got the Money in the Bank briefcase. It does sort of lend a lot more into the idea that yeah, Balor could win that title at SummerSlam and make Judgment Day the next big thing. I mean, and reports seem to suggest that they want to make Judgment Day the new kind of iteration of what the Bloodline is now. Now that's kind of petering out, and that's like you can see the kind of the end of that story and the horizon. Judgment Day could be the next thing to replace it. So,
And I'm all right with that. Like, we're a year out from Finn Balor joining the group, and yeah, it was a slow start, right? But I think that they're in a really good place now where people know what this is, and I think thumbs up.
so got that. So that's all the WWE stuff. So the only thing we have to talk about is AEW Blood and Guts, presented by Shark Week. Of course, that little
There's Chompy. Chompy was there.
yeah, Jumpy was there. The show kicked off with did I say Jungle Boy? But it's now just Jack Perry with Beethoven's Fifth as his
Not a
entrance
fan.
music. No, maybe not that one, but I think I don't want that to be long term, but I think that it was about as clear a departure you could have had from the
Tarzan
old
boy.
Jungle Boy music. So maybe it works on at least that side of things. So you might have it for a couple of weeks before getting actual entrance music. But he defeated Hook to become the new FTW champion. I thought that, considering this is the longest match we've seen of Hook so far, I thought it went very, very well. I think Perry for someone who has pretty much worked babyface his entire career, is a natural heel and was great in that role. Thought the match was very good. Thought the finish where he hits him with the belt and gets the victory. It's pretty much heel shtick, but it's effective, and I feel it worked here. And yeah, I think it was the right decision to have him win the title.
Yeah, this was the perfect decision. And I think the right move, like you said, he's very comfortable. He looked great here. Hook finally lost. We can move on with that character now. And thumbs up all the way around.
Saw a little backstage vignette of Alex Marvez going to find Don Callis and Chris Jericho eating dinner together. Like big scoops
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I like Marvez going, we're just gonna barge in on them now. Like that's funny. That's a good bit. But uh yeah, I'm really curious as to where this is going.
Speaking of dinner, MJF and Adam Cole went to a Chinese restaurant and they ate some spicy food. MJF thought it was too spicy, and so did Cole, so they went to get a drink and were told that the drink was 100% alcohol, which I believe is like just pure ethanol, in which case it's probably very unsafe to consume. But they had the camera fade away of them two getting drunk, and they said that the waiter reminded them both of Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia, and the segment ended with a freeze frame of them running towards him with a double clothesline.
Yeah, that was fun.
this is very much it gets to the point that a lot of their segments now are very much you either absolutely think this is the greatest thing ever or you absolutely hate this. There's no middle ground now between them.
Yeah, I'm about as lit as I can be because there's parts of me that's like, this is fun. And there's another part of me that's like, while every dynamic is different, like his MJF's dynamic with Cody was one thing, MJF's dynamic with Jericho was one thing. It all boils down to the same, like, and MJF gets to be a really goofy guy because it's, hey pal, I'm just your buddy. I think you can already tell where this is going, and it's fun, but I definitely felt that some segments of this were you could apply that old argument of, well, if this happened on WWE, people would have been, crying about it, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that for a lot of people doing this segment, it would come off really badly. But I think sometimes people tend to think that it either happened on WWE or happened on WWE, people have a different perspective. But actually, like, it's the performance involved that either make it or break it. And MJF and Cole are just great at what they do. So I thought this segment worked. But for other people in the same circumstances, maybe it wouldn't. So
Yeah.
Then we moved on to Britt Baker defeated Kayla Sparks in about less than a minute.
Just to get her on the show. To get a woman on the show, I think.
Yes, that's one of the talking points and the negative coming out of this is a lot of people were quite annoyed about this because there's so much paying lip service to your women's division rather than, actually doing something worthwhile. And I guess the question I would have for you in this is, what would you have done in this situation knowing the matches that you had laid out for this show? Would you still go ahead with this one just so you had a women's match on the show? Or would you say, yeah, no women's match? We've got other matches to do. We're just going to leave them off for this one show.
Personally, I would have gone with no women's match because why was Baker? There was a part of me that was like, okay, they're timing it interestingly enough to where Cole and MJF are about to walk out. Maybe they're going to interact for 2 seconds, and that could be your justification. But when that didn't even happen, I'm a believer in you don't need to do things for the sake of doing them. I'm a huge believer in equality, but I also think like representation does not replace, proper storytelling. And you can't just go, well, we had a women's match on the card, so shut up. Like, I think people, if anybody would have complained about there being no women on the show at all, I'd point them to, hey, you got Collision, you got Rampage, you got Ring of Honor. This show needed to be a special show. They did put Baker on the show. If you're going to complain about the lack of time, then I don't know what to say. Maybe it's harsh, but like maybe that presentation's never just going to work with you,
Yeah, I get that perspective. We had then the finals of the Blind Eliminator Tag Team Tournament with Adam Cole and MJF against Daniel Garcia and Sammy Guevara. Prior to this, there's a backstage segment where MJF presented Cole with some matching wrestling trunks, and then Cole presented MJF with matching jackets, and then he said, well, one more surprise. MJF came out and tried to do the usual thing where he points to the ramp to signal Adam Cole's entrance, but then they play MJF's theme again. He wonders why, and then it turns out that Adam Cole has had a mashup commissioned to both their themes. MJF goes crazy about this. Like, then they get to the match itself, and Gossi is doing his like dancing pose and towards MJF. MJF does it back to him even more vigorously. They do that for a little while, and MJF says, "Hey, if you want to dance so much, why don't we have a dance off?" And then they spend the first like 2 or 3 minutes of this segment having a dance off with each other.
This is the part where I said, if this happened, if there was a tournament, if there was a tournament right now to see who was going to face Owens and Zayn, and Pretty Deadly and Imperium ended up having a dance off, I think there would just be a lot of outrage of like, oh my God, this is why sports entertainment sucks. I think it worked. Like, I think it's funny. I just think it's such a huge. There's a weird identity crisis there. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was funny. I wouldn't have done the full blown like and lights and mute because that makes it feel too like okay, so you're just ready for this to break out at any moment. But other than that, I think it's funny. I just think a bit of balance for the fan base should be in order.
I think it was the record scratch that I thought went a bit too far for me.
Yeah,
Like you have that lined up.
It was too like I've seen this exact segment on Raw, and this is supposedly what people don't like. So when I see those same, and again, this is just a me thing, seeing critics of the exact same style praising it because of who's in the segment, it's just very like, okay, so call a spade a spade. It's not that you don't like that type of entertainment; it's that you don't like the company, which is fine. I'm just saying people should be a bit more honest with themselves.
I think the whole thing is being built around this story of MJF is parodying a babyface.
Yeah.
Is like so his whole thing, and the dance off is kind of like a bit of a babyface trope as well. Like the most like guy does the whole dancing thing as well. So I think that was playing into that aspect of it. And then you tell the match it's them beating up MJF for a while. MJF finally gets out of it and he does the flare flop into Guevara's crotch. And then makes like the big diving hot tag because that's his babyface thing right now. And Cole runs wild, try and do a double clothesline, but they keep getting out of it. They keep avoiding it. Eventually, Cole convinces MJF to do a tope to the outside, and Jericho's on commentary and says that that's the most reaction a tope's got since 1992.
Which
so like that
is absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
Like, it's so
just
fun.
like the crowd just going absolutely crazy for it.
This is a case study of making moves mean something. Because these people came unglued for a double clothesline like it was the Meltzer driver. Like
Yeah.
It's interesting how you can still manipulate the audience.
Yeah, and then they do manage to hit the double clothesline off the Cold, hit the Panama Sunrise on Garcia. They hit it, they get the win. They win tournaments. The crowd is just going crazy about the entire thing. They did a little segment there with Cole holding the title and MJF getting a little bit upset about that, but they hug it out and they celebrate. FTR come down, they stare each other down a little bit. And their match is going to be happening not on this collision, but the following collision on the, I believe it's the 29th, yeah.
I'm very interested in this.
I think there's so many different ways you can do this because in my head, I don't know what Tony Khan was planning on doing, but I think there's a good argument to say that the plan was they would lose to FTR and then that would cause the breakup and then they go towards a match either all in or all out for the title. They're too over now. They need to win these tag titles.
They're selling a lot of merch.
Yeah.
And it's not, there's so many characters in play here because Roddy every week is like, Adam, what are you doing with this guy? And then there's the CMFTR element of it because Punk's walking around with a red bag that we all know is just the AEW World Title, and he's not beating the drum too hard, but he keeps just going, Max, what's in the bag? It's a good time to get MJF Punk interaction. It's also a good time to go, Pinnacle never actually broke up. Is this a swerve on, Cole? There's a lot here.
I would say very much determined no on that one because the way that Dax and MJF were looking at each other is very much the indication that, yeah, they're bringing to the forefront the fact that these two don't like each other in real life. So
It's gonna be really fun to see how this plays out.
I mean, what I would do is that I would have them win the titles on Collision. I'd have them hold it until All In. And All In, I would have MJF and Cole defend the titles again against either FTR or another team. Like, you could just go straight to FTR again, and that's where they lose it. And then they do a little like segment afterwards, which you have MJF like try and feign the babyface thing and say like maybe even, or whether you do it on that show or you do it on Dynamite or whatever, and you do some sort of segment where MJF basically says, I know you want an opportunity at this title, and I think that we worked really well together, but I think that I've developed so much respect for you that I'm willing to put this title on the line against you at All Out, and like kind of like make the best man win type thing, and just have the thing where it's like, because my whole idea going into this was that Cole was going to be too smart to fall for MJF's bullshit, and that was eventually Cole was going to be the one that gets to MJF before MJF can get to him. But I think you've done so much of a good story of telling that they've actually developed a great deal of chemistry and kinship on screen, that now the real secret to making this a super hot match at All Out is you have MJF, you have them when they lose the titles, if they do win the titles, you have MJF just turn on Cole, like make it seem like they want to have that title match out of respect, but then he, low blows him, knocks him out with a diamond ring, like really bloodies him up, and then it turns into a really heated match on what literally like would only be on like a few days build, but then you have like that match for All Out and everyone is going to go straight for it. So that's the way that I would do it. But I understand there's a lot of different directions I can go now.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not even gonna hazard a guess because it's wide open, and there are a lot of factors.
It's good storytelling because it's been successful so far, and they've also left themselves a lot of room to maneuver.
Yeah, and I think more stories like this from AEW would be great to see, and I like the crossover of Collision Dynamite. Let's call a spade a spade. If you're not gonna create a solid brand split, there's no reason why individuals shouldn't be on the shows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the main event, and the main reason we would tune in for this show in particular, it was Blood and Guts. The Golden Elite defeating Blackpool Combat Club, Konosuke Takeshita and Pac. This was, just a great match. I still think that, like, on the grand scheme of things, considering it's just been like a great year in AEW so far for a lot of matches, I don't think it even cracks my top 5 for the year. But that doesn't.
I'd agree with that.
But it doesn't take away from it's definitely top 10. It doesn't take away from how good the match was. You have Claudio and Kenny start, but I won't go into break down all the things that happened here. But some cool stuff. So Moxley brings in forks, and then he brings in glass, and everyone pretty much takes bumps on the glass during this match, it feels like. And then probably the most inventive thing that came into this was bed of nails.
Yeah. Ow. Like, look.
You know how bed of nails works, right?
Yes.
In terms of it is pretty safe to bump into and land on.
Oh, I'd imagine, but it's one of those things that visually.
Oh yeah, visually.
You just feel like, okay, they're dying.
To be honest, there's one dangerous spot in this one because the first thing they do with the bed of nails is Moxley whips Kenny Omega or he drop kicks Kenny Omega into it, and Omega obviously bumps into it, and that's fine. But then the board falls over and catches his arm, and obviously at that point it's just one nail going against his arm, and so that cuts him up pretty badly. So that sucked. But the rest of the stuff, like the moonsault on top of it, I thought was super innovative, and it's actually probably one of the safest things they did on this entire match as well. But yeah, there's plenty of stuff like you had Matt Jackson doing a load of Northern Light suplexes to Yuta on top of the cage. Then when Yuta goes down, he drops thumbtacks into the ring from on top of the cage, and they drop a couple of members of the Blackpool Combat Club onto those ones. just loads of spots happening, so much violence, so many weapons all over the place. And then we talk about the last man to come in for the Golden Elite, which was Kota Ibushi. So his debut has had a lot of polarizing discussion in the fact that he didn't look in the shape that we know Kota Ibushi has been in the past. He looked like he'd aged quite a few years beyond, because he'd always had such a young face and a young complexion. It kind of looked like his age was catching up to him a bit, and he didn't really do much of note in this match beyond a couple of throws around with Takeshita and that moonsault to Moxley on top of the bed of nails. What did you think of Ibushi's debut?
So I want to go to the aging thing first because, yeah, I noticed that almost immediately, and I said to the person I was watching, I'm like, wow, he looks like he's aged a lot. And not only that, but I noticed that his timing was a bit off for certain spots, which is fine, but it hurt, I think, the expectation of what he was going to bring to the dance. Overall, no one's gonna complain here. I probably had the hottest take in that it was fine, but I definitely think, given that the story was so strong, they killed it a little bit by not being able to have the best of everybody there. Like Brian couldn't be there. I think that definitely hurt things, you know. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think that people might forget that Ibushi, this is like his third match since 2021. That he suffered a really serious shoulder injury in that match for Okada, which meant that he was out for ages, and then he had the whole dispute with New Japan, and told that might have had on like his mental and physical well-being as well. Then he comes back for a couple of shows over WrestleMania weekend, and he re-injures his shoulder then as well, so he's out of action for a little bit more. This was his first match back since March. So I think there's a lot of factors, a lot of extenuating factors that mean that it's understandable why this wasn't what a lot of people were hoping for, expecting. But I think that he's 42 now. He's not going to be in the prime condition as he was beforehand, and there's going to be a few like missteps here. You may not ever get the same level of Ibushi that you did like 4 or 5 years ago, but he's still, I'm sure, like given a bit more seasoning and maybe a few more matches under his belt between now, or like in a different environment, because it's also very difficult when you're in like surrounded by a cage. There's 2 rings and there's 10 people involved, and there's a ton of weapons and all over the place. I think that I'm sure we'll see another match with him in AEW soon, and it'll be a lot more fluid than this was.
I agree. That's kind of the take that I have as well.
Yeah.
And overall, I think people are just happy to see them all together. First
So,
time since All In, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think people are just happy to see that.
So then we had go to the closing segments of the match. So there was some miscommunication. Pretty much they were telling throughout the entire match between Pac and Claudio Castagnoli. Eventually, Claudio inadvertently hits an uppercut to Pac. Pac confronts him about it. They get in each other's face. Pac basically says, "Yeah, screw this, it's not worth it," and leaves the match. And that helps set up the match between Pac and Castagnoli for Ring of Honor coming up. And then basically as an act of self-preservation, because of how cowardly Don Callis is, he gets his guy Takeshita out of the ring as well. So it pretty much then boils down to the 5 guys of the Golden Elite versus the 3 members of the Blackpool Combat Club. A lot of people thought that this was a bit like backwards because they had the advantage over the heels. I thought it made total sense that the heels were, cowardly and they weren't friends with each other. So once they weren't getting on the same page, they fled for themselves, pretty much, 2 of them. So I think it's just
I just thought it sucked. Like it wasn't fair because that wouldn't have been the ending of the story, but you also know that this is the end of the story. I just wish we could have seen something more proper.
I think so. I think it was the best they could have done with the situation, considering Danielson's injury.
Right.
And I think that it works. It helps lead into the future matches. I think that there's a few other like main negatives I had of the match. The first thing is like camera work. I don't know, it's like difficult. There's 10 guys doing loads of crazy stuff throughout the entire match, and something outside the ring and some in the cage and in one ring or in the other ring. But like this is where those people should be making the most of their money. So like this is where you earn it, by being good at your job and directing it a lot better. So, and the main thing was the camera work for the finish, which we'll get to. The other thing is wrestling crowds need to shut the fuck up sometimes.
Yes, sir.
They were great throughout most of this show, and they were giving a lot of great reactions. I have a lot of positive to say about this Boston crowd, because they were very much into so much that was happening on the show. But stop asking for tables in a match where you've got better nails and glass and thumbtacks in. They're doing a lot of violent shit. You don't need a fucking table as well. And then they give you
literally, I tweeted, I'm like, there's a bed of nails in the ring, and you're asking for a wooden table.
Yeah.
You just want to see people go boom. Like it's so silly.
Yeah. And then when the table comes out and they actually oblige with you and they bring a table into the ring,
you want fire.
Don't then ask for fire as well, because they're not going to give you fire, and so don't like build yourself up to get obvious disappointment.
You had Cody and you booed him, but now you don't get fire. Like.
So yeah, and then obviously one of the major criticisms is the way that the finish happened. So I thought the finish as a concept was great, but how it actually ended up appearing on screen was not perfect, because they had Yuta. Hangman was hanging him with a chain with Matt Jackson as well. They were choking him out with the chain, and then the referee calls for it, even though it doesn't appear like Yuta tapped out. It looked like he was about to pass out, so maybe they were saving him there, but it was like submission or surrender. So I hadn't seen Yuta tap out, and the commentary seemed to think that Yuta had tapped out or something had happened. And so the Golden Elite win, but then they're told like about a minute later that it was actually Moxley who had been handcuffed to the ropes and so couldn't get involved. Had actually surrendered on Yuta because he wanted to save him because he was being murdered there. I thought it was good that it paralleled the match earlier this year between Hangman and Moxley, where Hangman forced Moxley to tap out in the same kind of position. So I thought that worked well. I thought the idea of Moxley surrendering for him shows that there is the camaraderie between the Combat Club that didn't exist between them and Takeshita and Pac. So they're still a unit. They're still looking out for each other. I think there's a lot of direction you can go from this. They didn't show this on TV, but there's clips and photos from afterwards.
How this make TV.
Yeah, I don't know. Of them shaking hands afterwards.
Look, I think if you're gonna do this, where the feud that has carried the year comes to a close definitively with them saying, "Hey, we respect you," that needs to be the ending shot of your television show. And that's where I'll go. You didn't need the 3-minute dance off, and you didn't need the 2-minute Britt Baker match if you couldn't fit this into your TV show.
I think it leaves open what they decide to do with it going forward, because if they want to and they want to go in that direction, they can show the clip of them shaking hands on the next episode of Dynamite, like just opening it and show a clip of it happening, because I assume cameras were still rolling at that point, and so they can show it and move forward with that. Or if they decide, oh, that was just something for the live crowd, let's move on.
Oh no, Claudio's already said that should have been on TV.
Yeah, but like
with Sports Illustrated saying, we made them better. We shook their hands. I don't know why that wasn't on TV.
But is that Claudio saying that because he thinks he should have been on TV, or is that that's not Tony Khan saying that he didn't want it on TV? So it's kind of like, again, it's down to Tony at the end of the day whether he wants to show that or not. So there's different directions they could take it. There's interesting in terms of like, where does this leave like Danielson with Blackpool Combat Club? Is he going to be super angry about the fact that they lost this match and that that Moxley showed weakness by surrendering on Yuta's behalf? And is there going to be contention between that sort of things? Is that going to lead to the dissolution of the Blackpool Combat Club? There's multiple different ways they can take that. Like Danielson can bring up the fact that I beat one of the greatest wrestlers of modern times, Kazuchika Okada, with a fractured arm, and you just gave up in the ring. That's not how we do things in the Blackpool Combat Club. And so I could see things happening there, and that leading to like a split between the two sides. It'd be interesting where the Golden Elite go now that this has all been brushed over. What direction does Omega take, and the Bucks? And so the Bucks haven't been tag champions in a while, or fought for the tag titles even for a long time, and got like Omega is there and like definitely pursue like a big title. Like Hangman hasn't been in the title picture for a while, so there's a lot of different stuff they can do there. There's the whole stuff with Jericho. What's Jericho doing with Don Callis now? Is like the loss here, meaning that because obviously the stuff with Blackpool Combat Club is over, but Kenny and Don and Takeshita isn't over. And does that mean that we could see? Like, I think there's a good possibility that maybe not all out or all in, but at some point we might see Omega and Ibushi versus Takeshita and Jericho in a tag match.
It could be. I can't see. Actually, now that you mentioned that, I could see that match being the thing. It just feels like Jericho's meant to swerve Don. I don't know.
But yeah, potentially, maybe that's down the road. But we'll see. There's definitely loads of directions they could take here. But at least we know pretty much definitively off this match that we've drawn the line now under the Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club. They'll be going in their separate directions now, so there's plenty of room for that to happen. And yeah, I'd say I thought it was a very, very good match. Definitely not my match of the year for AEW, but I think as an overall, depending on like especially considering like circumstances surrounding it, I thought this was a very good way to draw a line under this rivalry.
I agree, and I'm ready to see them move on. I think it's a shame Danielson just can't make it to Blood and Guts, but we'll see how this goes. Because hopefully he's healthy enough for next year's, and he's still wrestling the next year. But I still think he has a lot to offer a match like this.
So that's them moving on, and now we're going to move on as well, because that is all the stuff we need to talk about for this episode of the Hot Tags.
Just real quick, not that we didn't know this was coming, but they've officially announced it will be Asuka against Bianca and Charlotte Flair in a triple threat. So they have undercut a segment they announced for SmackDown where they would announce this and just announced it on Twitter.
They're still going to act like they're announcing it on the show as well.
They sure are. They absolutely are, Callum.
Okay, so that's something then. So there's a reason that you don't need to watch SmackDown. Just watch it for the Bloodline stuff and then turn it off. That's probably the way that
That's what literally everybody's doing anyway.
Yeah. So that's all from us then. So just a reminder, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to so far, then drop a like below. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're going through one of the podcast apps, just find a way to either like it or leave us a review or doing whatever you can to show your support there. Of course, we've already mentioned that you can head over to like the Patreon if you want to support us in a more monetary way, and obviously head over to smarkatmoment.com for any like articles and news and the heel and face turn list and the like breakdowns of these shows and the results coming for a lot of the other shows there as well. So you can track all of that stuff there. Rob, let us know where people can be finding you in between these sessions.
You can find me everywhere at Dude Release. You can find me most of the time on Fightful.com, sometimes on Wrestling.com. I do the Ring of Honor Reacts podcast every Thursday for right now on Love Wrestling. Their Twitch channel, we're trying to get that moved over to the YouTube channel. I'm sure that'll happen in a matter of weeks. And yeah, just follow me everywhere at Dude Felice, and I always appreciate the support.
And you can find me on Twitter at Weekmeister14. You can check out the power rankings every single Saturday over on smarkatmoment.com, where I rank the WWE wrestlers for their performance over the previous week. And there you'll also find the Fantasy League, also at wwefantasyleague.com, where we we based on the teams that we drafted, the picking up points every single week, all the wrestlers, and our teams picking up points as we head towards SummerSlam, which is the next rest stop where our teams will be added to, and maybe a few changes will be made as we continue the journey towards WrestleMania, where it all comes to a head. But yeah, and for Tony's side of things, you can check out all the stuff under A Mango Tree. Follow him at Tony Mango on Twitter as well. Find out all the other places there. Follow Fanboys Anonymous, support the Blueprint Project, all that great stuff.
And everything for Tony is literally anthonymango.com or amangotree.com, and you can find all his handy dandy links. You will likely be back next week, and we will continue your usual programming. But I thank you, Callum, for doing a wonderful job of hosting these shows.
It's totally fine, but Tony will come back and do as good, if not better, a job. As from next week, I believe that's when he's back from his voyages in Brazil. So back to full strength for next week. We'll have some new main event for you to enjoy as well. Hopefully you've been enjoying the little things we've done in the meantime, the pre-recorded stuff. So if you haven't already, go to listen to our 4-hour long epic where we run through our favorite wrestlers of all time. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about us and our wrestling taste, you should definitely be listening to that one. But yeah, we'll draw this up to an end then, if that's the case. But thank you very much for listening. Thanks very much for your ongoing support. And that's it from us. So this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.